Chinese research team announced to have achieved a significant quantum computational advantage. But what is it about, and how will this milestone potentially change our lives? And we'll also explore the wider political implications of the rise of quantum computing and the race to be at the top. Welcome to a special edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. I'll be talking exclusively to the very scientists behind this project. On December the 3rd, a Chinese research team claimed to have achieved the first milestone on the path to what's known as quantum supremacy. The team, which includes renowned quantum physicist Pan, announced that their quantum computer prototype completed in a couple of minutes a task that would take the world's fastest supercomputer 2.5 billion years. But what's the significance of such a breakthrough? How could the team make it, and what does it mean for China, other countries, and potentially for you? Joining me by phone today are two of the key players behind this project, Professor Pan himself. He's dubbed China's father of quantum, and Professor Lu Chaoyang, both from the University of Science and Technology of China. Also joining us from Stockholm, Sweden, is Professor Val Zwiller of the Royal Institute of Technology of Sweden, and from Austria via Skype, Professor Anton Zeilinger, member of the Chinese Academy of Sciences and also the Austrian Academy of Sciences. He is also winner of the Wolf Prize, one of the most prestigious international awards in science. So, gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to have you on the show. Let me go to, of course, Professor Pan for a bit of a background information about exactly what this project is all about, including the name of this computer that's called Jiuzhang in Chinese. So, Professor Pan, help us understand exactly what the project is all about and why this name for your computer prototype.
Hello.
Yes.
So it's my great pleasure to attend this program. So I'm so happy, and my former PhD supervisor and Professor Anton Zeilinger, and also with us, and also Professor Val Zwiller is also with us. So, so the reason why we call our optical computer as Jiuzhang is for two reasons. So the first one is because Jiuzhang and actually is a famous ancient Chinese book about mathematics. So, I mean, when I was young, I studied physics. No, I studied mathematics. So I read this book where you can learn a lot about the geometry and also linear equation. But of course, unfortunately, in that book, we do not have too much symbol. So all the mathematics are explained by language. So I just want to show, it's possible. Actually, in our old time in China, we already have some very important work in mathematics. So because our optical computing can calculate something very fast, so that's one of the reasons, and we give the name of our optical computer Jiuzhang. So of course, and actually we have another meaning about this name in Chinese. It's from a very famous collection of ancient poems in China. So in that collection of ancient poems, we can see a lot of very nice poems. So that's another reason why we call it in Jiuzhang. Yeah.
I see. Good that we have the opportunity to understand the stories behind just the name of this computer, because in a lot of international reporting, we just don't get, what does this strange-looking word, apparently, what does it mean? But thank you for the explanation. But let me go to your colleague, Professor Lu there. As I mentioned, this computer prototype is able to do some super things, calculating in just a couple of minutes what would take the world's fastest computer 2.5 billion years. So, Professor Lu, help us understand exactly what that means. Does it mean that your computer prototype actually already achieved what's known as quantum supremacy?
So actually, I think in our community, we have two words to describe, when a quantum machine can do a specific task that no classical computer can perform the same task in a reasonable time, and it's unlikely to be overturned by classical algorithm improvements. So some people call it a quantum computational advantage, and some people call it quantum supremacy. So in our publication, in our paper, we prefer to call it quantum computational advantage because we believe some people thought that the word supremacy is not so nice. It can refer to some other bad meaning. So we would like to stick to the word of quantum computational advantage. And so the short answer is yes, based on the optimal theoretical, based on the optimal classical algorithm and the state-of-the-art classical supercomputer. It appears that our quantum machine can finish the sampling work with which is much faster than the classical machines.
Well, this is a rather technical discussion, I understand. For a lot of us, it's going to be a little bit difficult to understand. So let me go to Professor Zeilinger, joining us from Austria. Maybe help us understand a little bit the whole idea, the significance of such an advantage or such a milestone. For instance, some reporting are saying that this computer is able to detect 76 photons, more than the average of 43 previously detected. What does that mean exactly in terms of science and technological development?
Well, the result is extremely impressive in my eyes, because to detect so many photons, in the exact number it is not important. It's something above 50 or something. But the important point is that you have to, the idea of this quantum computer is that you work with photons, which is particles of light, and to work with many photons. So the point is that you look at joint properties of these many photons in some way. And that means that your setup has to be firstly able to detect these photons with very high chance, this is a big advantage in the experiment. And secondly, you have to manipulate all these particles in a complicated network such they don't lose their properties. And this is an achievement which is enormous. I should mention that this kind of basic things were developed for the first time together with my student here at WePan when he was in Austria. And there we worked with 4 photons or whatever, and now he has so many. This is absolutely impressive. Let me give one small remark. What is really, I'm not so much think the time, how fast the computer is very important. But what is also very important is that they can achieve results which you cannot, even with a classical computer, find out that it's correct. It's so complicated to verify it that this is something where a classical computer would have to say, oh, I don't know if this is correct or not. And that is really impressive. That is most important, in my eyes, this is most important and leads to a very interesting development.
Okay. Professor Zwiller, let me turn to you. We know that, okay, this is a very big achievement, but this is not the first time that countries or institutions try to do this. For instance, Google in October 2019, they also were able to reach a kind of quantum computing milestone, and the new prototype by that time was processing 10 billion times faster than, this is the Chinese side, the Chinese story, that the Chinese prototype is even faster than what was developed by Google. So help us understand, if you can, by comparing what Professor Pan did versus what was done in 2019. What's the difference? Is there a new step achieved? Is there a different way of doing similar experiments?
Definitely, this is really a new step. It's a major step. I would call it a leap forward. I think we're really dealing here with a Sputnik moment where a totally new paradigm has been demonstrated. What we have here before our eyes is a totally new approach where this quantum processor that we have now here is based on light. It deals with photons. It processes photons at a single photon level on a large number. What has been done previously was based on other technologies which are very hard to scale up. So what we have here is a photonic-based system that is scalable. It's already achieving something that is very impressive, but it's also opening the way for even more advanced and more ambitious calculations and implementations in the near future.
Great. Let me go back to Professor Pan and ask him a question that many people would have on their mind at this moment. So it sounds very exciting. Maybe we don't exactly know the technical side of it, but we all want to know what practical use this new development is going to have, and how is it going to affect our lives, our societies, in what way? Professor Pan, help us understand this.
Right. So, as just mentioned by Professor Anton Zeling and Professor Varswila, and they already explained what is photonic quantum computing. So actually, the traditional computer deal with bit. So bit has two values, and 0 and 1. But for a quantum computer, the basic element is qubit. So for the qubit, and it can be either in 0 or 1, but in some time it can either, and it can even in the coherent superposition of 0 and 1. So that's one of the main reasons and why quantum computing sometimes can do much fast, can calculate something much faster than the traditional computer. So, however, as I just mentioned, and we can use different kind of qubit to perform quantum computing, such as Google did in last year. They were using superconducting qubit, and we are using a photonic qubit. So to do so, actually, it takes us a long way. And as Anton just mentioned, many years ago, it's almost 23 years ago, we managed to perform 3-photon or 4-photon entanglement. So at that time, I thought it might be the end of the photonic quantum information processing. So that's why many years ago, I sent my student Hao Yang to Cambridge to learn something about quantum dot, so that we can have many more, single photon states. But after some years' effort, we find out maybe we come back to the parametric bond conversion. So we find out parametric bond conversion might still be a good solution to do something meaningful. Mm-hmm. So in 2013, and we decide to go forward along this direction. So it really takes us a long way to manage to manipulate along the 50-photon manipulation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think one of the main meanings is not to claim we achieve the quantum computation advantage, because in last year, after the claiming of Google's results, mm-hmm. there's some other group also questioning and whether it's really sufficient to claim we already achieved quantum computational advantage. So one of the good things is we show it's also possible to implement something similar in the photonic system. So okay. People now will be more convinced. Yeah. So we can really do something useful, mm-hmm. Compared to classic computer.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something I would like to mention.
Yeah, okay, despite the technicality of all of these answers, I think one thing is clear, that it has taken a lot of years, a lot of efforts, and generations of scientists till we're able to come this far. Professor Liu, let me ask you, what was the biggest obstacle in your development of this technology, and how did you overcome it?
Actually, I think there are a number of obstacles which are...
The biggest, please.
If I have to say the biggest, I think I would choose that we have to phase lock the whole optical setup. So we have 50 optical paths. Each one have a length of 20-meter optical fiber plus 2-meter free space. And we have to make sure that the photons go through these optical lines. They are stabilized within a precision of about 25 nanometers. So I think this is something very challenging to us.
Professor Zeilinger, let me go to you. How do you look at the kind of scale of the work that's needed to complete such a task? We have already seen pictures, and for a lot of people, they say it's a magic thing that they're able to build this very complex structure in order to get the kind of precision you were talking about. How do you look at the sophistication of the technology that seems to be at work here?
Oh, this is really a breakthrough in the sense that you have to send all these many particles of light through many different glass fibers, the way they are used now to connect houses, and you have to combine them in a very good way, very stable way, and so on and so on. This was before possible for a few particles, but to achieve this with so many is really absolutely mind-boggling. And it shows that the path in the future will be very optimistic, because, I mean, clearly a way to go on is to now have all this in microchips, all this in small chips, including the sources and everything.
Yeah.
And then you can go to much, much higher photon numbers. And that is quite promising.
Yeah. Professor Swiller, are scientists from around the world able to learn, to benefit from the experiment that the Chinese scientists have done?
Oh, definitely, and especially be inspired, because what has been said here is a new level of complexity, which just seemed totally impossible 2 or 3 years ago. It's been achieved, and it tells us that, well, yes, you can be that ambitious, and we can already aim for the next level, where already now we have seen that it is possible to manipulate up to 50 single photon states. It is possible to operate 100 single photon detectors simultaneously in one experiment. So what we can do now is aim even higher and aim for very complex systems based again on quantum optics to solve very challenging problems. I think this is a very, very exciting that we can now, we have this demonstration that photonics is certainly the way to go for quantum computation and quantum science in general. Yes.
All right, many thanks to Professor Wald Swiller of the Royal Institute of Technology in Sweden, and from Austria, Professor Anton Zeilinger, member of the Chinese Academy of Sciences and of the Austrian Academy of Sciences. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we still have the 2 Chinese scientists, plus we'll talk about the implications their breakthrough may have on the world. Stay with us. We'll be back right after.
Making sense of the overwhelming wave of information means cutting through the noise to shine a light on the heart of the story and making room for new perspectives. True understanding means the ability to see events from more than one side. I'm Liu Xin, and this is The Point.
The success of the Jiuzhang, a new light-based quantum computer prototype developed by a team including Chinese father of quantum Professor Pan Jianwei, has, however, led to talks of potential national security concerns for some countries, as quantum technologies are able to break encryption keys more easily. It has also led to talk of possible quantum hegemony, in which China is feared to be able to determine the future of international politics. So are those legitimate legitimate? What do the scientists say? Still with me by phone are Professor Pan Jianwei and Professor Lu Chaoyang, both of the University of Science and Technology of China, and via Skype from UK, Alistair Mishi, Chairman of International Board at Center for China and Globalization. So, gentlemen, thank you for sticking with us and welcome. So, Professor Pan, let me go to you first still. Now, with the Zhejiang breakthrough, China currently seems to be leading with projects such as launching the first quantum science satellite, building a quantum network connecting Beijing and Shanghai, establishing the quantum computer, and the building of the world's largest quantum laboratory. What does this all mean for the world from your perspective?
I think it's twofold. So first of all, I mean, for example, for our quantum communication network, and can provide high security for future communication and so on. But on the other hand, the quantum computation can also provide us, and very demanding computational capacity, which is needed for our future development. So in this sense, so the challenge in the field of quantum information science is not a challenge only for China, but also is a challenge for the whole world. So with the development of quantum information science, we can provide a better solution for our future information science development.
Yeah, but
that's important.
Yeah, let me ask one specific question. Specifically, how can scientists or the world or other countries benefit from your research? Are you sharing these results? Are you keeping open your platform? I mean, how specifically can your research benefit other countries and people in other countries?
Right. So actually, and to really fully, benefit from development of quantum information science, it will still take quite some time. So for example, for quantum computing, we need to do three major steps. So what we have done is just the first step, by which we can show, in some specific tasks, so quantum computation can do much faster than classical computer. But it's far too early to claim we can really use such a machine to do something useful. So now we will continue to our second step. We will perform some specially designed quantum simulator or quantum computer to do something really useful to solve some physical problem or some chemistry problem or probably even for mathematics. That's what we are going to do in the next 5 to 10 years. Then in the long term, and probably and in the next 15 to 20 years, we want to try to find a possible solution to establish a universal quantum computer. Then by then, we can really fully explore the advantage of quantum computation. So it's still too early to say, whether our method can immediately benefit to all the people. But definitely, our method can inspire the future research in our field.
Alistair, let me go to you. However humble or however premature the Chinese scientists are saying that their research is to be put into practical use already, the talk is there, right? As I said, some people are saying, oh, China is going to claim quantum hegemony. There are already U.S. official or think tank pointing out potential threat, real threat coming from China because of the threat to the safety and security of their communication, because quantum technology is supposed to be able to break encryption. How do you look at these kind of talks and the political implication of the development we have talked about?
I think that we should all around the world applaud the enormous commitment of China to advance research in areas like quantum computing. But quantum computing is very much in the future. It's still at a very early stage. And I think that the way it's being presented in the media is wrong and it's dangerous, because to talk about Chinese leadership, Chinese hegemony, and that is a threat to the world, this is very dangerous, because it's part of the huge challenge that China has in global communication about telling its story. There are much, much more important areas in computing that should be drawing the headlines and should be drawing debate on this kind of program. And that is in the area of semiconductors, which is absolutely the backbone and the core of computing today. And the data is really extraordinary in that China is importing each year nearly $300 billion US worth of semiconductors, because it cannot make them itself. What should we be talking about and focused on, especially in this post-Trump era, is collaboration, understanding, communication, to understand the differences and the challenges, and especially in the area of semiconductors, because semiconductors is the absolute backbone of the computing future at the moment. And there's a serious imbalance, because China cannot make the semiconductors it needs for its manufacturing.
Yeah. Let me give the last limited of time to scientist Professor Lu Chaoyang. I want to ask you this question, and I give you 1 minute. Look, China is leading here, but is the race to quantum computing or quantum supremacy a sprint or a marathon? And how do you get affected? Do you get affected at all of all of this talk of digital supremacy, you know, digital competition between China and the United States or other countries? 1 minute, please.
Yes. So first, I would like to echo what the other two guests just said. So I want to echo that it's still very fundamental stage on quantum computer research, and building a quantum computer is not a race between countries, but it's just a race between humans and nature. And at this stage, you know, we would like to emphasize that international collaboration and open exchange are very important. Just like we all confront the coronavirus and we need to work closely to solve this problem. And the grand challenge we face in the field of quantum information today is also for all humans in this planet and not just one single country. So I would like to agree with the previous speaker that saying that, you know, China is leading and, you know, it's dangerous. It's just something, you know, I think we all the scientists should be collaborate more closely.
Okay, thank you so much. We have to leave it there. Such an interesting, fascinating discussion, but time is up. Many thanks to Professor Pan Jianwei, Professor Lu Chaoyang, and to Alistair Mishi. With that, we come to the end of this special edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle Liu Xin in Beijing. Thanks for watching. You've got The Point.